The reserve at Wildwood is a very typical situation where we get a before plan that is a new urban or T&D plan, and the developer simply can't make the numbers work. They don't want to build it. They don't want to have that problem, but the city is in a new urban slant and they're just set on it. But they haven't seen anything else that would excite them. So as we come into the reserve, we have these homes that face the entrance. We have these meandering walks. We have these varied setbacks. And so we're not giving them that same old subdivision that they're fighting against, because that's really what is at the heart of new urbanism and this traditional neighborhood design is they just don't want that same old cookie cutter character. And yet we still had to work within the confines of the existing home plans. And what you see are the existing home plans. Now, to the left, you see that little feature there? That's a trail coming into this meandering street. So we have one street that identifies the neighborhood. The new urban plan had no street that identified the neighborhood. They were all disconnected. As we look into the space, we're using the shaping of the street. The homes provide the visual interest by placing them where they open up into intersections, they open up into views, something that the new urban plan didn't do. So everyone has a really huge sense of space, no matter where you are, if you're in a large home or a small home. And what we did is at the main entrances, at the south side along the existing traffic circle, you see the large homes. And now we've come into another trail crossing. So we wanted to identify the trail crossings. And this is also where we put the mailboxes in the central location. So as you drive through the neighborhood, you've got different price points. We're trying to put some of the wider homes along the main street. You could see from a semi-aerial view, you get now a more of a feel of not just the topographic differences, which would have been a nightmare in that new urban plan. But as you can see, that we're working with the topography, and like many sites that have come to us, we have to do the grading, we have to balance the earthwork to make sure our plans are viable. And in this development, instead of having a central park, what we have is a few little of these more pocket parks, and that gives it more convenience to the homeowners. You'll see that the intersections, we're avoiding looking at rears for the most part. There are a few small spots where you would get a glimpse into a rear yard, but we try to avoid that at all costs. And that brings more of that urban front character and less of that suburban. Well, let's take a look at all the rear yards as we go down the streets. And here's another of those pocket parks, as you can see. As we start to look at the overall plan, we'll see that we've got two main entrances. One's, as you can see, coming up here, which would be at the south. Even though it looks like we've reached the north, we're actually coming into it from the other side of the development. And we have the entrance monuments and the features. And typical of all of our plans, we want to get that feel of welcoming space, almost like a rural character. And then as we look at the overall view of the sites, you can see the overall or the larger cul-de-sac radiuses. Again, cul-de-sacs are designed to go, a fire engine turnaround, when you make them larger, they actually become more efficient. Now, on that edge that you see here, the end of the property, there's actually an arterial street. So going down the arterial street, you would be seeing home fronts, not home rears. So it's another thing about our planning is we want to showcase the edges of the community where people are passing by. We don't want them to see home rears if at all possible. In some cases, we have no choice, but in most cases, we can then take and control the planning in such a way that we could showcase home fronts without having driveways out onto an arterial street. And that's what we want to do. We want to make it so that when the potential market drives by this neighborhood, we want them to pull in. We want to get them in the neighborhood. And now you can see how we've got another cul-de-sac. If you look closely, there's a tree-lined trail going from straight from one cul-de-sac across the main street to another cul-de-sac. Now keep in mind, we have a main trail crossing our main street, but people are either going to be entering the neighborhood from one side or they're going to be entering from another side. So actually at that point where that trail crosses, there isn't going to be a whole lot of traffic. So again, we're taking a look at this pedestrian connectivity, but we also want pedestrian safety. If this was a problem where that main street had a lot of traffic or a lot of potential traffic, we would have put in a pedestrian diffuser. In this case, we felt that we didn't need to. The amount of space that people would feel versus the new urban plan, where you're literally right up on the street with parked cars in the front, parked cars in the back, or a minuscule backyard, the the people really wouldn't have had any kind of sense of space. It's this idea if you put everybody on top of each other, you've got the sense of neighborhood, and we feel that's a bunch of bunk. It is, it's an architectural excuse to have this utopian society versus a place that does have space. When you look out the window, you're not looking on top of your neighbor. And so this is what we've accomplished at the reserve, a fraction of the infrastructure. It balances, the earthwork works, and this is what we bring to neighborhood design.